In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro rejected the regime changes and coup d'etat promoted by the CIA from the United States. Colombian President Gustavo Petro informed that he will not attend the 10th Summit of the Americas following the exclusion of Cuba, Nicaragua and Venezuela from the event. And in Ecuador, the number of deaths caused by police repression amid the ongoing anti-government protests rises to 3. Hello and welcome to From the South, from the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. My name is Pablo Micheliche. We begin. In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro rejected the regime changes and coup d'etat promoted by the CIA from the United States. During the National Council for Sovereignty and Peace, a Venezuelan president emphasized that Venezuela is not alone in opposing the attacks and threats used by the government of the United States to subjugate the peoples of the region and seize their riches. Additionally, he asserted that xenophobic statements comparing Venezuelans to criminal groups like the Tren de Aragua, which was exterminated by the National Police Force, must cease. In this regard, the Venezuelan president reiterated that the best vaccine to combat these threats and attacks is unity.
No to regime change that reminds us so much of the failed eternal wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and the list goes on. No to coups d'etat by the CIA that remind us so much of the 30,000 people disappeared by the CIA in the coups d'etat against Argentina, Pinochet's coup d'etat, and the 5,000 young people murdered and disappeared in coup d'etat after coup d'etat in Latin America. Latin America doesn't want them, doesn't need them. The American empire, with its supremacist and Nazi ideology, believes that it is going to unify us all into a single way of thinking, a single order, a single command. It is out of step with the times, because we carry a very strong flag. Our national flag, the yellow, blue, and red one that no one gave us, no one painted for us. Miranda brought it and Bolivar carried it, victorious in the liberating banners to Ayacucho, to Junin. And I am not inventing a fable. It is lived history. It is real history.
President Nicolas Maduro described the sanctions imposed on the country as silent missiles, noting that they not only harmed the country's economic, social, and political well-being, but also affected thousands of Venezuelans.
I think it's a very pertinent message, given that a group of Venezuelans had to leave the country due to a brutal economic war, silent missiles that aimed to destroy the economic, social, and political body of the country. They found the demon of xenophobic campaigns and xenophobic treatment, especially in the United States, where they try to lie every day and claim that Venezuelans are something like a criminal gang that we defeated and exterminated here. The famous Tren de Aragua. The people of Aragua are not the Tren de Aragua, nor is Venezuela the Tren de Aragua. Venezuela is a country of decent, honest, hard-working, caring and humane people. They must stop making discriminatory and xenophobic statements, and stop comparing the Venezuelan identity to criminal groups that have been attacked and exterminated in Venezuela.
In this sense, the Secretary of the National Council for Sovereignty and Peace, Jorge Rodriguez, emphasized that the meetings aims to bring together all sectors of the country for the comprehensive defense of Venezuela.
Venezuelans, from all political, cultural, economic, social, religious, academic, working class, farming, fishers of this country, with the intention and purpose of coming together to actively defend the peace of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, an active defense of our most precious asset, our independence, sovereignty, respect, and protection of the sacred territory of our republic.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news, update, and much more. We will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In a communique, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has rejected the aggressive and extravagant statements of the President of the United States, in which he publicly admitted to have authorized operations against the peace and stability of Venezuela. The communique reads, "This unprecedented statement constitutes a grave violation of international law and the Charter of the United Nations, obliging the community of countries to denounce these declarations, which are clearly excessive and inconceivable. We observe with extreme alarm the use of the CIA as well as the announced military deployments in the Caribbean, which constitute a policy of aggression, threat, and harassment against Venezuela." The communique denounces such maneuvers are clearly intended to legitimize a regime change operation with the ultimate aim of seizing control of Venezuela's oil resources. Furthermore, the statements of the U.S. President seek to stigmatize Venezuelan and Latin American migration, fueling xenophobic and dangerous discourse. The communique concludes, "Tomorrow, our permanent mission to the UN will present this denunciation to the Security Council and the Secretary General, demanding accountability from the government of the United States and the adoption of urgent measures to prevent a military escalation in the Caribbean, a peace zone declared by the CELAC in 2014. The international community must understand that impunity for these acts will have dangerous political consequences that must be stopped immediately." The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Non-Aligned Movement gathered at its 19th Midterm Ministerial Conference in Uganda to be held on 15 and 16 of October to express their serious concern over the ongoing developments of the Caribbean region. Through a communique, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Non-Aligned Movement recalled the statement issued by the Coordinating Bureau on 19 September 2025 and regretted that since then the situation on the ground has only escalated, including as a result of the deployment of additional extra-regional military forces and assets, coupled with further hostile actions, intimidatory threats, and even more aggressive rhetoric. It continues, the Minister of Foreign Affairs took note of the discussions recently held on this subject in the Security Council of the United Nations on October 10, 2025, in which a common understanding emerged on the need to strictly adhere to the purposes and principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, to the norms of international law, and to dialogue and diplomacy as the most ideal means to address and overcome in a spirit of coordination and solidarity any issue of common interest or concern. Finally, the statement reads, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Non-Aligned Movement reaffirmed their firm determination to uphold the principles of sovereignty and sovereign equality of states, territorial integrity, non-interference in the internal or external affairs of states, peaceful settlements of disputes, and refrainment from the threat or use of force against the political independence of any state, while expressing their solidarity with the people and government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Organizations in Grenada are urging the government to reject a reported U.S. request to deploy military assets on the island as Washington increases pressure on Venezuela. Sources say U.S. Admiral Alvin Halsey head of the Southern Command met with Grenadian officials in St. George to discuss regional security. The visit sparked speculation about possible plans to install a U.S. radar station, a move that has drawn sharp criticism from civil society groups. The Grenada Coalition for the Son of Peace, the Trade Union Council, and Citizens for Peace called on the government to refuse any military presence, warning that it threatens national sovereignty and regional stability.
The American demands to use the international airport, a civilian installation named after its revolutionary leader, Morris Bishop.
We go back to Venezuela. The Vice President Delcy Rodriguez held a video conference with the country's 5,336 criminal circuits on the eve of the 13th anniversary of the historic Golpe de Timón speech delivered by the commander Hugo Chavez on October 20, 2012, during the Council of Ministers at the Miraflores Palace. The central theme was the seventh transformation based on the organization of popular power as government in the territory. Also, the advances in the organization of popular power were highlighted and strategic lines were drawn to strengthen the transition from communal circuits to communes and to promote self-government rooms and banks. On the other hand, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez pointed out that October 20 will mark the 13th anniversary of the Golpe de Timón, with an event that will bring together all the criminal circuits that have been strengthened and have become tools of sovereignty and resilience.
Bueno, revisando, estamos ya en la ruta del aniversario.
We are already reviewing from the system of the popular government room that coordinates the executive vice presidency with the entire vice presidential council.
Que coordina la vicepresidencia ejecutiva con todo el consejo de vicepresidentes.
As you know, we have been working with the common circuits, the communes, and the communal councils, articulating around the plan of the 7 transformations, which means governing in the territory.
Lo que significa gobernar en el territorio.
Delcy Rodriguez also stated that Venezuelan people have found their own way to overcome the criminal blockade imposed by the U.S. government.
And most importantly, guaranteeing food in the territory is a strategic objective of the first transformation that also allows us, and we are seeing this in the economic circuits, to overcome the criminal blockade against Venezuela. Venezuela has found its own path, and we are in the process of consolidating the role of community organizations in the national economic circuit.
El circuito económico nacional.
Welcome back. Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced that he will not attend the 10th Summit of the Americas, which will take place on December 2025 in the Dominican Republic. The declaration happens after the Dominican Ministry of Foreign Affairs informed that the government of Luis Abinader decided not to invite Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to the event, to which Petro responded that dialogue does not begin with exclusions. Let's recall that Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum also expressed her non-attendance to the event due to her disagreement with the Dominican government's decision. The exclusion comes in a context of escalating hostilities by the United States in Latin America and the Caribbean. Colombian social movements gathered in the streets of the country to demand greater attention from the national government to guarantee life and permanence in their territories. This Wednesday, union groups, indigenous and farmer movements are mobilizing to demand a dignified life for Colombians and the end of paramilitarism in the country, protected by imperialism and the elites. The unions also urge the government to debate a national proposal that includes urban reform, establishing a national emergency for feminicides and other national security issues. The National Electoral Council of Honduras approved the participation of 68 national and international organizations as official observers for the general elections on November 30. According to NCE President Ana Hall, a total of 43 national and 25 international missions were certified. Hall stated that these missions aim to fully monitor the event and reaffirm the transparency of the Central American nation's democratic processes. More than 6.5 million Hondurans are called to vote in these elections, in which they will elect a new president, 3 presidential designates, 298 mayors, 128 members of the National Congress, and 20 members of the Central American Parliament. And now in Peru, violent clashes erupted near the Congress headquarters in Lima as thousands of protesters rallied against the newly installed government of President José Heri. The demonstration, organized less than a week after Heri's inauguration, quickly escalated when protesters attempted to dismantle protective barriers surrounding the legislative building. The protest was marked by symbolic acts, including the burning of a violin effigy and allusion to rape allegations against Heri. The unrest underscores deep public dissatisfaction with Peru's political establishment, as demonstrators, many from youth and labor groups, accused Congress of shielding Heri from accountability. Heri, reportedly observing the events from a helicopter, has yet to issue a formal statement. Now in Ecuador, the number of deaths caused by police repression rises to 3, while the national strike is still ongoing after 24 days. On Wednesday, the Quechua Hazaraguro people confirmed the murder of Rosa Elena Paqui due to cardiorespiratory arrest caused by the inhalation of tear gas used indiscriminately by the police. The indigenous movement also confirmed the death of José Guaman, who was fighting for his life after being injured in Otavalo, adding a third victim to the repression. Indigenous groups condemned the attacks on demonstrators protesting against Daniel Noboa's neoliberal policies. In this context, they reported aggressions perpetrated by hundreds of police and military personnel and denounced the presence of law enforcement officers dressed in civilian clothing. Ecuadorians urged the government to end the repression, respect human rights, and bring justice for those who have been killed in defense of the people. For his part, Ecuador's Minister of Infrastructure, Roberto Luque, reported on Wednesday that he had received reports of explosions on 2 roads in the country, following the deterioration of a car in front of a shopping center in Guayaquil. Luque said that the explosives were placed on the bridges of the Guayaquil-Machala and Machala-Cuenca roads in order to block or interrupt traffic in that area. He also emphasized that the competent authorities remain deployed to determine the current state of these structures and assess the damage caused. The government of Israel announced the reopening of the Rafah crossing located on the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt for the entry of humanitarian aid into the Palestinian enclave. The Israeli administration confirmed the reopening of the Rafah crossing following the return of the bodies of 4 detainees by the Palestinian resistance. In this context, the Tel Aviv regime concealed the measures it had planned to take against Hamas, including the reduction in the number of humanitarian aid trucks entering the Palestinian territory. With the lifting of the blockade, around 600 humanitarian trucks are expected to enter the Gaza Strip, while thousands of Gazans will be able to access the territory through the Rafah crossing. And Spain is the scene of demonstrations in support of Palestine to demand the compliance with the peace agreements reached between Israel and Hamas. Thousands of protesters gathered in the city of Madrid and Barcelona to denounce the aggressions of the Tel Aviv army against Gazans and the blockade on the entry of humanitarian aid. They also demanded that the Zionist government comply with the agreements established in Egypt under the mediation of the United States. In this context, Spaniards assured that only the international pressure will be able to end the genocide against the Gaza Strip. For teleSUR English, my name is Pablo Micheliche. Thank you for